So someone asked, why do women ghost me? And that's obviously a loaded question because there can be a lot of different reasons. But we're going to go over a couple big mistakes that I used to make that I know got me ghosted at least a handful of times. They're very overlooked. I bet a lot of you are making. We're also going to touch on some of the more common reasons why it can happen, as well as how to actually handle it, because it is a very difficult thing to have happen to you. So first, when I was around 21 years old and very, very inexperienced, I ended up lucking out and getting a date from online dating that was a very, very attractive girl. And, to date, she was probably the best looking one that I got from actual dating apps. And I was just punching well above my weight class. So I went on the date. And when I arrived, she was sitting outside of a Starbucks, like on a patio chair. So I go down and I talk to her and things are going okay. But the sun came out and I have a very low tolerance for heat. Like I sweat a lot very easily, unfortunately. I know a little bit TMI, but I was like dripping sweat and my face got red. And then I started thinking of it and I'm like, okay, I bombed this date, whatever, it is what it is. But she actually suggested we go inside to the air conditioning as she could see that I was visibly upset, but it worked out enough. She actually wanted to meet up again for the second date. And I swear this has to do with ghosting, so give me a moment. So we do go on a second date. Everything seemed to be going okay. We met up with two of her friends. They were a couple. They had an apartment. Right when we got there, they started to smoke and, pass it around. Now, I had limited experience with weed and it really just never works well for me anyways. But I didn't want to look like a loser in front of her, peer pressure. So I'm like, okay, why not? But this stuff was strong. Like very, very strong. And of course, after I take it, he tells me that the guy he got her from calls this type rock star, which doesn't really help keep me calm headed. So we were all sitting on the floor of their apartment, watching TV. There was a table around us. And I remember looking down to my left and there was a door to the apartment and there was another door that was like to the washroom. And for some reason, I'm just like glued to it for a while. And I remember thinking that my heart stopped, very typical response. And I didn't want to like go like this as I was looking down. So I was just like, resting my head, trying to check my pulse. And then I was thinking that it did stop. And then I'm like, well, why am I still awake? And then I was thinking like, will they be able to handle the situation if I were to pass out? And just very typical response of just taking too much. But all this was going down in my head. And I was just trying to like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to, how do I get out of this? How do I sober? Should I call my mom? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I was just looking. And then I remember just thinking like, oh my God, I've been looking down this hallway for like 20 minutes. I mean, it felt like an eternity. Fortunately, they were probably completely out of it as well. They didn't even notice, but I was literally just like doing this the whole time. But anyway, it was kind of funny. Anyway, the night eventually ends. I end up driving her home, which obviously I should not have done. I was young and dumb and, wasn't thinking if I, was in a condition to drive or not. But when I dropped her off, she seemed a little bit disappointed. And I was still not really, catching on to things just as from an experience, let alone what I was under the influence of exactly what was going on. But basically she wanted me to come inside at that point. And right after that, she sent me a message, like by the time I got home, about how cozy her bed is right now. Now I was very oblivious to signs at that age, but I like to think I would have at least picked up on that if I was like, completely clear-minded. But I don't even think the way I was feeling that I could have even performed in bed anyways. But she did ghost me after that. And I'm not completely sure, I can't say with complete certainty that was the reason, but things have happened in different situations where essentially I just wasn't moving fast enough, where they just wanted to hook up and I didn't even know you could. I really, at that age, I was still kind of thought that, okay, you have to do the dance of going on the dates. And, certainly some women you do and some women you don't. And that one, I'm pretty sure it was the second date, was fine to hook up and things just didn't unfold for me at that point. Now, it turns out things might have actually worked out with that girl because about a day before I go on that date, I had a big family gathering at my house and my sister came over and her friends came over and they were like mid-20s. And one of them told me that he apparently works with that girl's brother. So her brother apparently searched me on Facebook, found that there's a connection between, because I was friends with my sister's friend, and approached him on the job and told him that I dare not do anything to hurt her in a very intimidating way. And obviously he ends up coming up to me, my sister's friend, and being like, who exactly are you dating? Like, where are these like girls? Because I got a very intimidating message from somebody that I work with, and apparently this guy's all like tatted up and very like intimidating. Now, even being at that age, like I was too in my head to, I don't know, I guess a big ego to even care about that. But in this case, I remember that she did tell me that he just got out of prison like a couple months ago. So yeah, it might have worked out for the best. But anyway, going back to ghosting, another big issue that I had was I was just kind of boring and dry. Like, it's 100% okay if the first conversations you have, even up to the first date, is like just small talk essentially. Like, you are a random guy from the internet if this is somebody through like Tinder or whatever. But after that, you actually have to try to create some spark. You have to open up. You have to get a read on each other. So not being able to move at the right pace and not having conversations that are actually engaging, not just like asking how their day was and very just surface level talk. Those were really the two biggest reasons why I got ghosted in the past. However, there are still other things like talking too much about yourself, being overly negative, being clingy, just controlling what they do or anything like that. Like, that's going to push just about any woman away. Now, finding a mistake that you may be making always requires some self-awareness. But if you are able to do that, and it is kind of hard sometimes, and of course, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you or anything like that, that, that we have to change ourselves to be able to, attract women, but there is still very obvious mistakes. And really the amount of objectivity that you can have about yourself, the amount of self-awareness, that's really parallel to the amount of potential growth. So overall, it is a good skill to have. But when you do get ghosted, like, don't dwell on it. Take a moment, do a quick reflection like I did, that I should have done a lot earlier, that realized, okay, maybe actually women want to move a lot quicker, or maybe I'm a little bit too dry and boring in my conversations. But the majority of the time, it's just going to be a lack of compatibility. Like, you're just two different people, and she found that out before you. And there's a quote that I think is quite applicable, and it says, when you're ghosted, that you have calculated your significance to that person. It sucks, but yeah, that kind of nails it. You have to realize, like, women are also in a natural abundance mindset. Like, they have all the options. They're like going different routes with different guys at different times. And that's why it's so important to do it yourself, to develop that, which takes time, through skills, with cold approach or dating apps. And especially, I know a lot of guys, like, once you're just starting to date, you can get that one-nightitis. You can get like overly attached to somebody when it doesn't really logically make sense, because you only know them for like maybe a month. So you should not feel so like connected and attached to somebody that you don't really know well yet. And if you are able to develop the abundance mindset, knowing that you can actually go out and meet somebody new with relative ease, with, a relative timeline, like, that just provides the peace of mind that is just absolutely necessary when you're dating, because you can think logically, and that's really what it's all about, because your emotions are very influential. And just a quick note here, I'm actually talking about ghosting in terms of like 1 or 2 weeks, maybe 3, that you're seeing somebody and then get cut off. If you're actually dating them, like, that's messed up. Like, they're not a morally just person. So in the end, you're just dodging a bullet. Now, I know a lot of guys, angry guys, that will like get really upset when it happens and like send them a full message or say some brutal things. So I'm not going to lecture you on that, but sometimes, maybe there is a good reason for it to happen, but like, I always just, at least for me, prefer to just end everything on good terms, just because, take the high road, feel better about that. And but there was this one time, so there was this girl that ended up ghosting me, and she was a barista at Starbucks, where I met her. And then it was literally years later. I thought it was safe to go to the Starbucks now, and my girlfriend and I were going through the drive-through, and as we were about to give our order, the girl on the other side of the radio, we could tell, was visibly like shook, like flustered. Like, she was just like, oh, she was part laughing, but like sounded like she was like scrambling, because she obviously saw me sitting in the passenger seat. And so we ended up getting our drinks, and my girlfriend like reached over. I don't think she ever saw me, like saw that I saw her, but I had like my hoodie up. But she got the drinks, and as we were driving away, that my girlfriend just looks at me like, did you date her? And it's like, yeah, like it was pretty obvious. But anyway, it just felt like, not that I would have pursued that if I wasn't dating my girlfriend, but it's just like she ended up reaching out to me like a month later. It's a bit of a homewrecker to try to do that, to like, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I did respond back, and I'm like, I'm actually dating somebody. And yeah, so, you know, maybe if they ever have a good opportunity to go to that, like if things might still spark up again, but I mean, like 95% of the time I wouldn't even like engage that anyways. But like ghosting is ruthless, and it's unfortunate that it's become so normalized, especially that time. It's like in between where you're like, are they just busy or are things over? Like the fact that that's a thought process that like is very, very common to have is just really unfortunate. And I know like there was one time, literally just one time after a first date, and a woman actually, she messaged me like, hey, things you know, didn't work out. I had a good time, but I'm going to be seeing somebody else, you know, thanks. And yeah, it's like, oh, I was like surprised. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, I wish her the best, and things ended on good terms, and that's great. And, you know, it's too bad this isn't kind of like talked about enough, because being ghosted, like if you ended up on this video because you got ghosted, like I feel for you, and it sucks. But, you know, a big part of like why I ended up like not really being like, it always sucks, but a big part of like not actually being impacted by that is actually developing a system, just having the skills to actually go out and meet somebody new when you have, you know, if you're wanting to, with like relative ease. If you are needing help with that, I do have more information in the description. But that's about it. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.